Now, it's been a blue weekend in politics. John Steenhuisen has been re-elected as DA leader. He's also declared the EFF as the party's enemy number one. But some have criticized the DA over the lack of black women in the party's top echelons. The DA Federal Congress has indeed been an eventful one. Let's reflect on this and more with political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa. Lukhanyo, good morning and thank you as always for your time. Your views on just the outcome of federal leader?
Good morning, Vundo, and good morning to the viewers. Yeah, I think much of the results were expected. The fact that John Steenhuisen was appointed for a second term with an overwhelming majority of about 83% really was expected. And I think it's a bit similar to the numbers that he got in 2020 when he then trounced Balintuli with an 80% majority in that contestation. So it's improved his fortunes, although by about 3 basis points, which is 3% this time around. But it was very much expected that he would come back with the resounding victory as he has. And I think that's something that should give him confidence that his leadership style and also his vision for the party is something that is endorsed by a majority, an overwhelming majority of DA members.
Now, Dr. Palatse, being interviewed on the sidelines, said the party missed an opportunity with her ahead of the ANC's imminent collapse. Would a Palatse win have significantly increased the party's electoral fortunes as she believes?
She might believe so, but I don't think the DA believes so. The DA has abandoned the growth project for the political party. It has now taken on a strategy of consolidation to go into galvanizing and mobilizing the DA voter base, which is the core made up of white liberals in South Africa. And I don't think Palatse would appeal very much to that voter base, and therefore she doesn't fit within the broader DA strategy called 2024 and the coalition governments that can then be sort of put together as a result of what is expected to be a hung election next year. So I don't think Palatse is part of that strategy for the DA and the people that are the core sort of strategy makers for the DA, like Helen Zille, Jordan Hill-Lewis, and the other people that are around Helen Zille and this consolidation strategy that they've put forward.
Lukhanyo, I want us to touch on the diversity conversation. She committed to fight for diversity from within now. That was still in the interview she was having on the floor just after her loss. She committed to fight for diversity from within, but it seems as though party members are speaking past each other, because Helen Zille, also on the sidelines, stated that, you know what, if we look around, the DA is by far the most diverse party. A third is black, a third is white, and a third is coloured. What do you make of that whole conversation around diversity? Is it that people, when they speak diversity, they mean diversity in the leadership, not necessarily the members?
Yeah, Mfundo, I think you are quite correct. They're speaking past each other, and this is a rhetorical tool that Helen Zille uses, because when people speak of diversity, she understands they mean representation, and the DA is not representative of the demographics of this country, even though they have a support base of about a third of black people. Black people in this country make up about 89% to 90%. So those numbers are not represented within the membership of the DA, and they do even worse with regards to the leadership. There's only one black leader from the leadership that has been elected this weekend that made it into the top leadership. That's 10% black leaders represented in the leadership structures of the DA in a country that is 89% black people. So there you can see that there's a lack of representation. The question of diversity, Helen Zille is the one that she plays fast and loose around with that, but the reality of the matter is that the DA is not representative of the demographics of South Africa, and its leadership needs to change. I mean, even not just in the issue of race, Fundo, the issue of women as well. This is something that we castigated the ANC on when there's only 2 women that made it into their top 7. There's only 2 women that made it into the DA's top 10, and that is something that is very concerning, the lack of representation in the leadership of the DA.
But the DA is a political party, keeps emphasizing that in 2019, as Helen Zille would put it, when they dabbled with identity politics, they didn't fare well. they really struggled with their electorate because many preferred the merit aspect of things, to say do away with looking at race, do away with looking at gender, just put someone, if they're competent or qualified, to be in that position. So what happens there? That if they try again to take into account the demographics of the country, they seem to lose their voter base. So what do they do?
Doing the right thing is never easy, Mfundo, and this is where you need moral courage from leaders that have taken the mantle upon themselves to lead society, because society needs to be thrust in the right direction at times, and leaders are not all the time sort of the moral ethics taker from what the ethics are of society, but sometimes they drive morality and they sort of pull society into the future, dragging and screaming. And this is, we've seen this as well with issues of human rights and also LGBTIQ rights in society. The ANC said society was not ready for same-sex marriages in this country, but the ANC had to take a leadership role to ensure that we do what is right, even though it's difficult. And I think that's something that the DA needs to do as well. The issue of transformation, the issue of representation is something that the DA cannot simply avoid, because it seems to affect their electoral support or, a certain base of their voters. They need to challenge that issue and take it head on, even if it means in the short term it will lose them vote. But I don't think representation, diversity, and sort of human rights issues are going to lose you support in the long term. And I think that DA doesn't take a long-term strategic view here. They're taking a short-term view that they're going to consolidate around the 20% mark, that they are going to abandon the growth project, and that's where they are going to leave issues on this particular matter. And it's unfortunate that they've taken that short-term view.
But Lukhanyo, what of those who say the DA is always battered on this one, but in comparison to the African National Congress or the economic freedom fighters, they still remain the most diverse, in as much as they haven't met those targets. But according to them, they're still fairly more diverse than the others. What of that statement when others say they're honestly constantly being at least criticized for the lack of diversity when they're slightly better than the other two political parties?
And I think that it's justified that they be criticized in this manner, Mfundo, because when the ANC sees where it comes short in terms of diversity, in terms of inclusion, it makes a concerted effort to ensure that it's able to overcome those challenges. They introduce 50-50 policies within their leadership structures. They decry the fact that women still are unable to rise to the higher ranks of the ANC. When they see that there aren't enough white people represented in their leadership, they co-opt some of these people. For an example, Konov was co-opted into the NEC because they understand that they need to have diversity and inclusion within the broader scheme of the political party. The EFF does the same thing. When the Eastern Cape was elected in their leadership without a single woman in there, the leadership of the EFF nullified that whole leadership structure and restarted that process to ensure that there are women that are represented there, to ensure that there's diversity that is there. The DA doesn't have the same responses to these things. They seek to massage the erroneous outcomes of a democratic process that exists in a patriarchal society and in a society that has issues of racism and racialism that still impact on it. And therefore, you see those challenges that we have represented in the democratic outcomes of our democratic processes. And the DA doesn't want to take abject steps to ensure that they are able to remedy some of those challenges. And that's why they are castigated, and I feel it's failing.
And then to Steenhuisen's address, he made it clear that there is absolutely no room for the EFF in what they are conceptualizing as some sort of a compact with opposition party. Is it in their best interest to already pronounce certain parties as enemies before even the polls?
Well, it's not in the best interest of coalition negotiations post-2024 elections. However, it's in their best interest going to 2024 so that they're able to mobilize their base, they're able to galvanize their base behind this threat that is the EFF that they're going to now sort of pump up and make them to be, the area that they coalesce around as the DA. And this is, Mfundo, in an attempt to ensure that they claw back some of the support that they lost to the FF+, the more right-wing elements of the white liberal agenda in South Africa abandoned the DA, supported FF+, and the DA is now trying to claw some of that support back. And by to do that, they need to create this sort of friction between themselves and the EFF to ensure that they bring those people back that don't want the EFF and the EFF agenda to come back into the DA fold.
And then just in closing, John is counting on a significant shift post-2024. The ANC will vacate the union buildings. But when just looking at the political climate, the party has been troubled, the ANC that is, for years now. But somehow opposition has not been able to benefit from the ANC's internal strife. Voters either choose to stay home or continue to vote for the ANC. What would be the difference this time when you just look at the climate right now?
I think it's the speed of the decline of the ANC. I mean, when you look at the 2021 local government elections, the ANC dipped below 50%. So every political party smells blood in the water, and they're circling around the ANC. So all of these other people that can see that voters are abandoning the ANC are then starting to put into place sort of policies and electoral messages that will be able to draw that support to themselves or the people that are abandoning the ANC and losing faith in the ANC. And the DA believes that it will be, by the time we get to 2024 and the challenges that we're facing in terms of load shedding, in terms of the high crime rates, in terms of the highest unemployment rates amongst the youth in the world, the highest inequality rates as well on the planet, that those challenges are going to ensure that the ANC dips even further below 50%, and the DA is hoping that they can drive that into the early 40s or late 30s if possible, so that they can also counteract any potential EFF ANC tie-up. If the ANC can drop below 40%, it doesn't matter whatever support they get from the EFF, they'll still not be able to get the 50% majority. And that's what the DA is trying to drive at here. And that's why they want to consolidate their voter base and consolidate the opposition against this ANC-EFF tie-up that they imagine could happen post-2024.
Lukhanyo, as always, thank you very much for your insights. That's political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa.